is 87948. Somebody type 87948 in the chat if you could, please. So prenuptial agreements are these things where some people get really offended by them. Some people think, oh, prenups, that means you expect us to get a divorce. That means you think the relationship isn't going to work out. And that's, in my view, completely false. That's not what a prenup really is, in my view. What a prenup is kind of insurance. It's insurance that just says, okay, in case we don't work out, I want us to have an orderly departure. And one thing that I talk extensively about in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, is that you don't want to, when you talk about using relationships to protect your money and making sure that relationship chaos doesn't create financial disruption, it's not just important to know how to behave when you're getting along. It's also important to know how to behave when you are no longer wanting to work together or when you dissolve the partnership. It's funny. My wife is a relationship therapist, and she spends a lot of time talking to couples before and after they get married. And one thing that she actually teaches a whole class on is how to break up in an appropriate way, like how to do a healthy breakup, right? Because a lot of us have seen breakups that get really messy, really ugly, really expensive. Somebody is mad because somebody stole their money, or somebody ripped all the money out of the bank account, or somebody's mad because they got to pay child support or alimony, or maybe it's something that's just embarrassing. One person, this happens a lot with celebrities, where one person will just kind of air the other person out publicly and ruin their brand, and next thing you know, they're losing a lot of wealth because of that. So effectively, a lot of this chaos is very, very expensive. It's very, very costly. And really, if you think about it like this, remember that your free time is one form of capital for you. That is part of your capital base. So your free time and your energy. So how can you invest in your business and invest in your life when you're spending all of your capital, all of your energy fighting with another person, just right, going back and forth in this warfare with another human being? If you've ever gone through it, you'll know that there's nothing productive that happens when you're constantly fighting. So effectively, what I would say to you is that as you're talking about prenups, I will say this, just for full disclosure, my wife and I do have a prenup. And the reason we got a prenup is because I don't want her, I don't need her stuff. She don't want my stuff. And we both had stuff when we came together. And if you want to know if that mattered to me, yeah, I wanted to marry a woman that had some stuff. One of the things that I personally always believed, and because my daddy told me, but I don't know if that means it's true. It's just my daddy told me, and I respect him. Is he always said that you really don't want to spend a lot of, if you have a lot to lose, you want to be careful about being around people that have nothing to lose. And I saw that up close. I've seen that in various situations. Maybe even as I became more public and I had a lot to lose, there were just some spaces where I said, I really don't want to be, I don't need to be here, right? Because if I have a lot to lose and you have nothing to lose and we have a conflict, well, then sometimes people will just burn the whole building down because they have nothing to lose. And so dealing with people that have something to lose sometimes can create a more orderly interaction, right? You won't see two billionaires typically airing each other out, seeking to destroy each other's wealth, because it's almost like the US and the Russians all have thousands of nuclear missiles aimed at each other. So there's like mutually assured destruction. If you launch a nuke at them, they're going to launch one back at you. Everyone's going to be in trouble. But unfortunately, which kind of stinks, is that when you have other situations where a bigger country is taking on a smaller country, then you can have these imbalances where they can really hurt each other. The bigger country says, "Oh, you're just little. I can hurt you, and it won't matter." But then the little country says, "Oh, well, we're gonna just become terrorists, and we're gonna just find anything that you have good that's going on, and we're gonna destroy it." So effectively, sometimes I've just seen relationships where people become terrorists in each other's lives, and they say, "Well, you know what? If I can't have you, nobody will," or whatever, right? These crazy sorts of ideas, and it just becomes a complete mess, and it becomes financially expensive. So I think prenups are a good way to kind of prevent that. Also, prenups are what we call in finance, we call that optimal contracting. Optimal contracting is basically a prevention of another big problem that occurs in business and in relationships called moral hazard. We talked about this in class. Moral hazard is basically this simple idea that whenever you make an agreement with another person, you're losing some power. You're losing the ability to go backward in time and fix the commitments that you made before. So you marry someone, they turn out to be a terrible person. Now you're like, oh my God, what did I do? I signed up for this terrible thing. Now I'm unhappy. How do I fix that? Well, optimal contracting is how you can minimize and prevent some of this. And also due diligence is an important investing concept that applies to every kind of investment that you make, not just money. Due diligence means doing your homework. Due diligence means taking your time. Due diligence means being patient. So when I'm making an investment or I'm thinking about buying a building, I'm not going to go and just say, "Well, empty my bank account out now. I want the business. I want the building right this second." Do you understand? I want this. I want this business right away. Right? No, I don't do that. I have to. I'm supposed to do my due diligence. I'm supposed to spend time learning about the building, learn the history of the building, making sure there's a proper inspection, do some negotiation, do some research. Right? That's how you make a proper investment. Now, what's interesting though is that when people make investments that are more important than money, investments that money can't buy, like deciding where to invest their body or to invest their love or to invest their future, I don't think people do due diligence. They don't. I mean, think about how many times you've seen somebody who met somebody and thought they were so beautiful that they said, "Oh, I want to marry that woman," and you don't even know her. You haven't even talked to her. You don't even know her name. But you literally in your head said, "I want to marry that woman." Well, that's very risky, right? Or a woman who meets a man and they go on a couple of dates and he's a great guy and he's really nice, and so next thing you know, you decide to connect in a lot of heavy ways, and then next thing you know, you're feeling like Risa Tisa, who did that whole series, "Who the F Did I Marry?" Right? So you're spending all this time reflecting on how terrible that person was. But then, if I was to really ask a hard question, I would say, well, did we do our due diligence? Right? How much time did we spend doing our due diligence? So what I would say is that is hard to do, though. It's really hard to do because you have to be really conscious to do due diligence in relationships. Because I'm convinced that love and relationships are designed to draw on our unconscious subconscious mind. It's so powerful. It's like, a really beautiful woman or a really attractive man. It's like seeing like a big old ice cream sundae right in front of you, like the best food you could ever eat right in front of you. And it can make us irrational. It can make us get us into irrational quick decision making that we then regret later on. So there has to be a consciousness in terms of self-awareness. See, self-awareness is the key. Self-awareness is so important because self-awareness is where you know where your faults are. You know where your vices are. You know what things that can trick you, that can do a rope-a-dope on your brain. So you avoid those things in order to ensure that you can do your due diligence before you walk into a situation that might be ultimately harmful for you. I don't think that this kind of thinking is encouraged in our society. I don't think young people are encouraged to do any of this at all. I think that television and media convinces young people to just jump right in, make the decision, make a move, YOLO, live for today, and next thing you know, you got all these regrets. And I remember one thing that I concluded when I was 22 and I was sitting in that apartment all by myself and nobody was around and I'm sitting there just thinking about stuff as I said, wow, people make a lot of silly decisions because they don't think about stuff before they do it. They don't process because life moves really fast and you're not encouraged to think. If I talk like this, like the way I'm talking to you, some people are gonna tune out, or some people are gonna say, "Oh, you're over analyzing," or "Oh, that's boring," or "Oh, you're too serious." And I would say, well, I don't think anything's much more serious than your life. I don't think anything's much more serious than you possibly wasting the next 10 or 15 years in a terrible situation because you made a snap judgment and a snap decision. I want you to look around. A financial consciousness exercise I encourage you to do is this. I want you to pay close attention when you're reading in the media about people who have these messy, messy divorces and these chaotic situations, like where they're ripping each other apart in the media and accusing each other of terrible things and costing each other lots of money. And I want you to really ask yourself this question that I asked myself a long time ago. As I said, it's so fascinating to me that this person you hate, the person who's now your mortal enemy, that if I went back in time and I talked to you about that person, say 2 years ago, you would have sworn by that person. I mean, you would have told me that I was a fool for telling you not to marry that guy. You would have died for that lady, right? Like that was your ride or die. Like y'all were connected at the hip on every level. Spirit, that's my soulmate. How dare you talk about my soulmate? But now you're talking about this person. This is the mother of your child. And you're talking about her like she is the devil herself. And I'm like, why would you go have sex with the devil? It's because the devil is tricky. Because the devil's sneaky. Right? The devil knows how to pull at your little emotional and physical strings. They know that as a man, we get tempted by things, and women too, right? So again, it's a facetious question, but it's one that I really figured out that definitely as a man, I said, I don't think I can ever be a powerful, successful, or wealthy man if I don't at some point learn how to have some discipline and discernment about little things like sexuality and those choices of who I allow into my space and into my circle. I figured that I remember concluding that, and it's not to say I got it all right. I mean, we all make that mistake. I to this day I'm still vulnerable to that mistake, but maybe perhaps a little bit of self-awareness allows me to at least be aware of the vulnerability. Right. So even though I still become vulnerable, I still make mistakes. I'm kind of aware of a lot of my blind spots so I can kind of at least know what's happening as it's occurring instead of just living life day to day and then looking back and saying, well, what the heck happened? I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people look back at their own lives and can't even explain their own, like they talk about their own life as like they're talking about somebody else's life. They can't even explain how they ended up right where they wanted to be. And when I was talking to our 20-year-old one time, I think I remember telling him this. I said, man, you're 20. You got your whole life ahead of you, and this is great for you. And I can just tell you that what you want to avoid is the fact that I know a lot of people who wake up one day at 35, 40 years old and they look around at their lives and they don't know how they got there. Give me a yes if you know that. Give me a yes if you know people who felt that way. Maybe you're 40 years old and you're like, why am I sleeping next to this person? How did I end up in this job? How did I end up with this life? This was not the plan. This was not the plan. In fact, I'd be curious to see. I'd like to go see if there's a survey out there of people who, at the age of 40 plus, are living the life that they thought they'd be living when they were 20. Like I really would like to know that because I don't know the data, but I'm gonna guess that it's probably very low. I think that there's probably a very low percentage of people who at 40 are living the lives that they thought they were going to live when they were 20. And I feel bad for them. I hate that. I hate that for people, right? So the other piece to this that comes to mind is that I think that the reason I'm cocky enough to sit here and do something like financial consciousness training with you, and then spin off into these other areas that seem almost like they're relating more so to life than to money, is because I can definitely say to you that I'm not in that category. I can honestly put it on a stack of Bibles, put it on my grandmother, which I would never do that if it wasn't true. That I literally am living a life that I kind of expected to live when I was 20. Like if you went back and told Boyce at 20, this is what your life will be like at 52, he would be like, wow, okay, so it worked. My plan worked. Right? The only difference is that it's actually better. It actually turned out to be better than I thought it would be. And so in this, if you want to know the secret was like extreme consciousness, constantly thinking, meditating, awareness, looking around at where am I? How did I get here? Where am I trying to go? How do I get there? And to really do that, you gotta block stuff out. You gotta block people out. And the same thing is true with financial awareness. This all translates back to your finances too. You can't I'm really astonished by how many people just truly don't understand why they don't have any money. They really have no idea. They don't get it. And I think that it's not, and again, I don't think it's their fault because I really think that if you look at the education system and the way it's structured and everything else, it's designed to keep you blind, deaf, dumb, and stupid. Capitalism needs its commodities. You understand? Capitalism needs its sheep that are going to be led to slaughter. It needs its food to be fuel to feed it, and human beings become the food. Human beings are because you can't get around labor. You can't run a $1 billion company without somebody willing to get up every day and go to work. And that person that gets up every day and goes to work, you don't need them thinking that they're supposed to be the CEO. You don't want them thinking that they're supposed to be independent. You don't want them to remember all the other things they should be doing if they weren't sitting at work all day, because that type of awareness makes for a much more difficult negotiation. It's much harder to get someone to do something if they have 1,000 other options. People that have options are less likely to do what they're told than people who feel like they have no option except to do what they're told. You understand? So the system, in my view, I think again, I don't know if someone specifically did it this way, because if they did it, they were pretty smart. And there's a whole conversation about the Rockefellers doing this, because I can imagine the Rockefellers. We talked about the Rockefeller family, how they built their wealth, how they protected their wealth. I would be willing to bet you that part of what the Rockefeller had in terms of an advantage is a type of awareness, a systematic, broad awareness that most people don't. So I'm willing to bet you that he did sit around and say, how are we going to get people to come to work every day? Because my grand master plan won't work if I can't get all the soldiers to get in line, right? And maybe he thought he was benefiting those people by doing that. I have no idea. I know Henry Ford used to force all the workers. He would pay them really high wages. He paid them $5 a day, which was really high at the time. So he paid them lots of money, but he also demanded that they live a certain way. He would come up in your house and tell you that your house was too dirty, that you need to clean the kids and clean the dog and wash the front porch. Like he would do stuff like that because he felt like, because I have money and I'm paying you, you're going to do what I say. So there is kind of this history of wealthy, powerful people feeling like they're supposed to be the guardians and the guiders of society. I think Elon Musk has some of that in him as well. With his this guy grew up during apartheid, so I can only imagine what goes through his mind. But still, though, so this is why ultimately I would say financial literacy is in most spaces something that you're gonna have to get on your own. And even if you get it in a public school setting, it's typically going to be basic stuff like how to have good credit, how to manage your credit cards, how to deal with student loan debt, how to get a good job, how to invest in your 401k. These skills are important, but these are not the skills of people that ultimately end up shaping their own destiny in a really meaningful way. But they can advance you. So don't think that I'm in any way saying that all that's worthless. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I see some of you are asking some quick questions here. The DOJ's lawsuit against Apple. Yeah, Errol, okay. You know what, Errol, I would say that the DOJ's lawsuit against Apple is something that was expected for a long time. I don't know. I don't really think the DOJ is that serious about antitrust violations. I will say that they likely did it because they sort of been punked a little bit. They've been made fun of for not investing in antitrust issues or investigating those things, right? So I don't know what's going to come of it. But you know, I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to know because a lot of times they'll have these companies come before Congress and they'll do a hearing, and then nothing happens after the hearing. They just, shame them in public, and that's it. So I don't know what's going to come of it. I think Apple definitely has a monopoly. Apple's definitely guilty. They've been accused of this for a long time, and what's probably going to cause them problems is that fee, that App Store fee of 30%. It's just too freaking high. If they did, 20% or 18%, I think that they would probably be in a different situation. But 30% is such a big bite, especially when you have billion-dollar companies that have apps in the App Store and they're having to give you 30% of their revenue. So I think that's where all the attacks on Apple are coming from. Sharon, how do I set a stop loss? You know what? There is a whole stock market program where we talk extensively about stop losses and stuff like that. So we can't go through that today. That's beyond the scope of this particular class. But if you go to the blackstockmarketprogram.com, that's everything's in there about stop losses and stuff like that. But basically, a stop loss is where you set up something where you are basically setting what they call a limit order, and you tell the app, hey, look, don't sell my stock, but if the price drops to this level, then go ahead and sell it. And you can do limit orders pretty straightforward way in your Robinhood app. So here's a link to the Black Stock Market Program if you want to take a look. And it is the first month is free, so feel free to go take a look at that, and it'll explain everything you want to know about the stock market and then some. There's so much stuff in there. It's a really good program. Let's see, Sharon, is there anything we can do with our 401k to save it from the market crash? Let's see here. You might want to have ask the people that manage the portfolio to put your money in some more defensive stocks. These are stocks that are less likely to be hit in the event of a market crash. But really, if it hits, and then another thing you could do is you can diversify, make sure you're diversified away from the stock market. So if you have, like, one thing that we did, and my wife and I did this in 2021 when the market was going crazy, and I didn't like the levels. I thought it was way too high. So what I did was I took about 20% of my stock market portfolio and I put it in real estate. And so when the market did crash, a lot of that money was protected because I'd basically taken it out of the building before the building caught on fire, and it was able to appreciate in the real estate space. So having your money spread out is a good way to prevent a crash. Another thing about crashes is that they typically go away with time. There's never been a stock market crash in history that didn't eventually go away, right? So ultimately, when people fear stock market crashes, I just tell them, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but it's gonna pass. The average bear market lasts about 14 months. So if you can just shut your eyes and not pay attention, sometimes that's the best approach. I'm not saying never pay attention, but I'm saying that that's literally what my wife does as an investor. My wife does not pay attention to her investments. She just follows basic rules, and she's built a tremendous amount of wealth by doing that. Her father said max out your 401k, put as much money in as you can. She did that. And then, so when the 2007, 2008 crash occurred, she just didn't, she wasn't aware of it. She saw it on TV, and but she kept doing the same thing, and she made a ton of money because all those stocks that went down became cheaper. So she was able to buy them at a low cost. And then when they tripled in price, she made money from that too. So I would not overthink it. I would not try to become a stock market risk management professional or a day trader. I would maybe talk to the company though and just kind of say, I want to make sure I'm protected in case the market declines. What suggestions do you have? And what they'll probably suggest are some more defensive, lower risk assets. Another way to defend against a crash is to have cash on the side so you can buy stuff when it's cheap. So those are some little thoughts that you may want to pursue. And also, if you want to get some profit alerts when I see something worth investing in, text the word stock to 87948. If you text stock to 87948, I can